We're lucky today to have two awesome guests. So we have Steven Stewart, who was the manager of Stone Temple Pilots and has led an epic music career and is now breaking through the technology world with music technology. And his startup is an awesome network that I'd love to have him describe of awesome people that are building this amazing startup through friends of mine that I met in Las Vegas. Another person who's joining us from Las Vegas is Jason Hartman. Now this is a guy who is an awesome drinking buddy and also who's built an empire within real estate, including in the education world of that as well. So I guess I wanted to start off, not just for me to tell your story, but also to have you guys tell your story. Let's start off with you, Steve.
So I managed a band called Stone Temple Pilots for 10 years, from 1990 to 2000. I grew up with them. I played in a band that was their sister band before they were called Stone Temple Pilots. I started working in the music business and made contacts on networks. And when they were looking for a deal a couple of years later, I shopped their tape around for about a year and a half, knocked on every door, got turned down 99 times out of 100, but it just takes one. And made a deal with Atlantic Records in 1992 and put out 5 records with them over the next 10 years and sold maybe 25 million copies around the world. So built my career on those guys and had 20 other artists in the interim time, signed to major labels, other major publishers, handled their touring, all their business, and let them pretty much create and perform. And after that, I got into tech. I realized I'd missed out on the tech booms while my head was down in the music space, and start working with YouTube creators, content creators. Was a COO of a couple of startups, and now I'm to the point where we're building a music-based startup that I think we'll talk about today.
Yeah, epic.
A really great idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So my story is I got into the real estate business first year of college and started investing in real estate. I was interested in being an investor. And I bought my own real estate company, sold it to Coldwell Banker right at the peak of the market. Everybody said my timing was great. I guess it was in hindsight. Closed that deal in 2005. And that was in Orange County, California. And about a year before that, I started shopping around for places to put some of my capital that I was going to get out of the sale of that company. And I'd always been a real estate investor, always did very well as an investor in real estate. But having a big check come in all at once like that, it was kind of hard to deploy. I was trying to figure out how to deploy that cash. I knew would happen when the deal closed. And I went around to various financial advisors and stuff, and it was all the same thing. Nick, that's your background, so it's the same little report out of NaviPlan Pro software or whatever with the pie chart that says, get some small cap, large cap, international, blah, 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 right? And they all said the same thing, and I thought it was just so unoriginal. I couldn't believe it, right? And we've talked about this before.
Well, yeah, because I used to sell those exact same plans.
I know.
Sell to my friends, my family.
Yeah.
That was my initial business as a teenager.
It's what Wall Street does, right? And I thought, why can't there be a financial services firm for real estate investors? And I couldn't find anybody to help me become a nationwide real estate investor so that I could have geographical diversification. And so I basically created a company to become, I was the first client of the company. And I basically started buying up properties in these different, what I thought were undervalued markets. And it went really well. But I couldn't do it without the infrastructure of a company. I just tried to do it on my own at first. And so that was 12 years ago. For that company, I started podcasting. We used to spend about $250,000 a year on talk radio advertising, on KRLA, KFI, all the Los Angeles stations, because we were in Southern California at the time. And then I started podcasting when I discovered that, and just created this whole new lead source for the real estate company, and then got into a bunch of other podcasting fields as well, and that's just been a really good run. I mean, podcasting is a great medium, and it's a way to reach an audience, very targeted. So I've kind of combined the media business and the real estate business, and those are my two primary businesses. I have a startup we've talked about, and hopefully a big disruptor business that'll be, and some other things I do, but I'd say that's the core of my business experience.
Awesome. Well, earlier today I did a panel that was on the topics of how the spirituality of these people who've gone through life challenges and how it's influenced their business. And with you guys, I wanted to talk about not necessarily the spiritual side, but what is it about what you're doing now that you believe is going to make a massive change in the world, and what are you doing on a business level that's different, or how did you find that path to make what you're doing more unique than everyone else? Let's start with you.
Well, I've been on the artist side my whole life, so I've represented artists, through thick and thin, and basically against the labels, against the publishers, against everybody else. They're kindred spirits, and they're very fragile at times, and I think they're best served to write and perform. So they need almost like a protector that handles their business for them. So when I saw the labels and how the label system worked, it's kind of stacked against the creatives, right? The label hands you a contract and says, here's the contract, it's 100 pages long, you're either gonna do this or you're gonna starve. And artists hate to sell out, but at the same time they know there's a check waiting, and that's one way to get to some success in their career is to partner with a label, give up many of their rights, and then hopefully have some success and be able to take advantage of that somewhere down the line. And what we're doing now with this company Vest is we're basically taking the label system apart. Right? We're democratizing the process where an artist can actually bring funding into themselves without using a third-party filter that collects most of the money and keeps it. So whereas a label would want to sign you for maybe 3 or 4 records, control your publishing, your merchandising, your touring income, and your recording income, and give you a very small amount of money for that, now an artist can go on a song-by-song basis and elect to sell whatever rights surrounding that song that they want to, right, at whatever price they want. So it allows them to have direct contact with their fan base and potential investors and reap all those profits versus having to give up to 90% to a label or a publisher.
I thought it was fascinating how you compared that to the way films are financed and how you're democratizing. It's just funny how those two industries grew up differently. Music and film were just have completely different types of systems of the way the capital formation happens.
And there's no real way to invest in music, right? If someone said, I have a $100 million fund, but I want to put it into music, the best you can do is buy some stock in Sony or Warner's or Universal. There's no way
very indirect.
There's very indirect, a lot of different waterfalls that go through, and the artist is the last to benefit.
Well, it makes sense to me because in our industry we manage coaches that go on tour, and they might have $1 million in product sales, and if we were only giving them 10% of the net profit, they would be extremely frustrated for having to do so much work. Mm-hmm. And so much of that is not being done by record labels anymore.
Correct, and it's the control, right? They put the control back in the creator's hands. And also what you've seen as a result of this record label industry now is you're seeing 5 producers, really a handful of producers that produce probably 95% of all the pop music. And it all starts to sound the same. There's the actual creative juices are being coagulated into 1 or 2 handfuls. And what you hear, at least on the top level, it's very formulaic. They just put everything in a template and it's done. And we want to reinvigorate the artist side and the creative side of the business, which everybody's focused on distribution and sales and how do we get it on iTunes? How do we get something out? How do we get to build it, right? How do we start with the genesis of that? How does a song come together? How do I get it to the point where it's palatable by the public? So we're focused on that. We think there's a big market there.
Awesome, I love it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about your story.
Well, so, my thing is that I always like to say Wall Street is the modern version of organized crime. Okay, most people, even when I interview Wall Street people on my podcast, they agree with that. Even though they're part of it, they agree in concept. It really is. And so, in the same way you talk about democratization and the power is being pushed down to the people, like the PC revolution pushed it down to the desktop instead of in the mainframe, right? And the computing power was right in your hands. And now it's in your pocket, with your smartphone. And that's what's happening in so many industries. And so I just wanted to take what I believe is the most historically proven asset class, income producing real estate, and make that easy for people to invest in large geographical areas, apply the rules of financial planning to that asset class. And so that's what I've been doing with my real estate investment company the past 13 years. And I think that's represents a very big change, because the way it's always been done, Nick, is it's always been like this local business. If you wanted to become a real estate investor, you'd call this realtor that or that's sending you postcards in the mail every month, and they would only say invest in our market. And that may not be the right time in the cycle of that market. it may not be a market where the metrics make any sense. The rent to value ratios could be terrible. Usually, real estate investors live in nicer areas. They might live in coastal areas or more expensive cities, but those are typically terrible places to invest. They're good places to speculate and gamble, and sometimes you ride a cycle and you do great, but that's more luck than being good. And so we help people invest in very conservative, yield-producing assets in these very linear markets. And so it represents a big change because we allow these people that live in nicer areas, usually, to invest in areas that they're not close to geographically, but these areas make a lot more sense. And we tell them diversify into 3 to 5 markets nationwide, and we just make that a very simple system for them. One of the sayings I have is, invest in places that make sense so you can afford to live in places that don't make sense. For example, this beautiful home we're in now, right, where you live part-time, is a place that doesn't make sense, but it's a great place, it's gorgeous. But it wouldn't make sense as an investment, right? And so that's kind of the dichotomy of the conservative linear investments versus the speculative investments that aren't really investments. They're just speculations.
Yeah, well, we're definitely out of the box thinkers, and I think that the thing is, you're both in really competitive industries. The music industry and real estate is really tough, and there's so many people that are competing in it. Now, what you both have done is you did what you did in such an elaborately higher way than what people who have failed or tried to compete against you have tried to do. And I mean, even in our world, trying to break into the dating niche was kind of like that. I was wondering, what do you believe that it's the values or traits that you need to have that would allow you to be more powerful, more successful than the other people that weren't able to become you?
Well, it sounds so cliche, but perseverance, number one. I mean, I think you can do good work for a long time and be very successful. If you do great work and falter immediately, there's a lot of people that flake, right? Just showing up every day puts you probably in the 80th percentile, and then doing great work if you show up every day gets you there even a little further. But I think one, it's coming from some place that you have passion for. I mean, I've been in music pretty much my whole life, so it's something that's in my genes. I feel close to it. I'm driven by it, and I enjoy working within that environment on a daily basis. So it's not a job, it's not work to me. It's just what I do, and I love doing it. And I think that comes through no matter what industry. And if you're really tied to it passionately from the heart, that comes through in the work that you do.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. The worst thing that can happen to any business is to become a commodity. And we saw that happen with the computer industry, for example, where everything became a commodity. Now, Apple has changed that quite a bit, since the days of the roaring PC era, where everything was just commoditized. It's a box, and all of that kind of stuff. And so you've got to think in different ways. Look at other industries and the way they're doing it. Look at the pain points people have and figure out how to address those pain points. There's that great quote. Forgive me, I can't remember the author of the quote, but it's, some see things as they are and say why, while I dream of things that never were and say why not? And that's the thing you've got to do, is you've got to think like a disruptor. You've got to look at pain points, and every business, the customers, the vendors, the suppliers of this business, they all have these pain points, right? And how can you address those pain points? And it's usually not by looking at your competitors. It's usually by looking at a completely different industry and bringing that concept over to your industry. So, for example, in my real estate business, I looked at the financial services industry and I thought, they have a mediocre product, or a crappy product, depending on your opinion, right? But they have a really good system of selling it. They have a very good, scalable system of doing that. They act like financial advisors, right? Which is good. I think that's good. They use financial planning, which is a legitimate art and science. I just don't think they're doing it with a very good asset class. So I wanted to take that good stuff from that industry and just substitute the asset class and use income property as the asset class. So that's an example. We look at any of these big innovators, Uber, Lyft, all these companies that have changed the world, right? And the sharing economy, and it's just a completely different concept, right? It's disruptive. So think like a disruptor, very important.
Outstanding. Well, thanks guys for coming down for the interview. Appreciate it.
Man,
Cheers.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. Enjoyed it very much.
Awesome.